Hi, I'm Jason Horsch, owner of Xanadu Gallery in Scottsdale and Pine Top, Arizona, and this is a moment in art history. Today's painting is perhaps one of the most iconic works of all time, The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh's Starry Night is one of the most widely analyzed art pieces in the world. What makes this painting so fascinating to researchers in fields ranging from art history to psychology to physics? Van Gogh himself might not have expected The Starry Night to become one of his most famous works. In a letter to Émile Bernard, he called the painting a failure, believing that he had made a mistake by straying too far from nature and into abstraction. Looking at some of Van Gogh's other nocturnes like Café Terrace at Night or Starry Night over the Rhone, we can see that he took a much different approach with The Starry Night, pulling more elements from his imagination. Van Gogh had argued before with Bernard and Gauguin about whether these kinds of expressionist abstractions were acceptable. Van Gogh himself thought his style was post-impressionistic, preferred to work more closely to nature, so The Starry Night is an interesting departure. Van Gogh painted Starry Night in 1889 in the Asylum at Saint-Rémy, where he had admitted himself after a particularly bad argument with Gauguin and the psychotic episode that led to the mutilation of his left ear. When the artist arrived at the asylum, it was less than half full, which allowed him to occupy two rooms: his bedroom on the second story and a room on the ground floor where he could paint. The Starry Night was likely inspired by the view from his bedroom window, but it would have been painted during the day in his studio. Along with his swirling, expressionist sky, Van Gogh took some other artistic liberties with the scene, adding buildings like a Dutch-style church near the center and the imposing cypress in the foreground. What's really captivating about the painting, though, is the swirling sky and its glowing stars. Van Gogh once compared the stars to dots on a map and mused that as one takes the train to travel on Earth, we take death to reach a star. There's something heavenly about the halos he gives each star in the painting. The way the sky swirls and undulates has attracted a lot of attention and sparked a lot of research and analysis on its own. Mentioned in my discussion of Hokusai's Great Wave, linked below, that there's been speculation that The Starry Night was heavily inspired by that piece. The similarities are pretty hard to ignore, and we know that Van Gogh had woodblock prints and had other work that followed the impressionistic Japonism movement. Another interesting lens researchers have studied Van Gogh's Starry Night through has been physics, which might seem a little odd, but physicists have been drawn in by the way the sky looks a lot like the visual representation of the complex fluid dynamics concept of turbulence. There's even a theory that Van Gogh represented turbulence with almost perfect mathematical precision repeatedly during his artistic career, but almost always when he was struggling the most with mental illness. Ed has done a discussion of some of the turbulence research on Van Gogh, which I've also linked below. It's almost unbelievable that Van Gogh considered this brilliant and beloved painting a failure during his lifetime. It really goes to show that art is ultimately subjective, and an artist may paint one of the most valuable paintings in the world and think little of it. It didn't help that few people acknowledged the brilliance of Van Gogh's work until over 20 years after his untimely death. Just like Van Gogh saw failure in The Starry Night, the people around him saw him as an unsuccessful and mentally disturbed aspiring artist. It wasn't until the early 20th century that his brilliance began to be recognized. Aside from his brother Theo, Van Gogh received very little support and encouragement, even from his own family. Born into a devout Dutch Reformed church family, the young Vincent van Gogh wanted to become a pastor, but after some failed theological courses and exams and an unsuccessful stint as a missionary in Belgium, he was left humiliated and dependent on his family for support. Thankfully, Theo encouraged his brother to pursue art, which had long been an interest, and Van Gogh began painting seriously. Van Gogh studied first with Dutch artist Willem Relfs, who convinced him to attend an art academy in Belgium despite Van Gogh's previous academic failures. True to form, the young artist quickly got into trouble with several of his teachers, and his formal art education was cut abruptly short. Van Gogh continued to study outside the academy and eventually in Paris, where he went to live with Theo for a short period. There, he was influenced by Neo-Impressionism and Pointillism and began to incorporate elements of those styles into his art. Van Gogh began to thrive artistically after a move to the south of France. He produced 200 paintings while living there and eventually had the mental breakdown that led to his stay at the Asylum, where he painted the Starry Night. The artist's life was a difficult one, filled with bouts of depression, failed relationships, and little recognition. Van Gogh only sold one painting during his life, which was cut short in 1890 when he died from a gunshot wound to the chest. Historians have recently been debating whether his death was suicide or manslaughter. But either way, it was a tragedy that he never had a chance to see how many people his work would inspire. I've long admired Van Gogh's work, as I'm sure many of you have, and I've seen a number of pieces in museums. But my admiration was always casual until I read the excellent biography by Stephen Nafa and Gregory White Smith. This biography brought Vincent to life. I've also read The Yellow House, Vincent van Gogh, Gauguin, and 9 Turbulent Weeks in Provence by Martin Gayford. The more I learn about the artist, the more fascinating I find his work. I would love to hear your impressions of the Starry Night. Does it deserve its fame? Have you seen it in person? What impact has it had on you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining me for this moment in art history. If you enjoyed this bit of art history, be sure and subscribe so that you'll be notified about future videos.